of challenges, resilience is quite common and doesn't rise from any superhuman abilities. Psychologist Anne Masson goes as far as calling it ordinary magic. Resilience is about building immunity towards negative situations. It, according to me, comes from having a little bit of disappointment every now and then and having a strong and reliable support system. I've been working in Milan for a while, and I'm sure you've heard how the pandemic has created chaos there. In February and March, it was exceptionally scary because we kept hearing horror stories of how hospitals had turned into war zones, with doctors having to prioritize between patients based on their probability of survival. So, naturally, as an expat, I was scared for my safety and I wanted to come back home. It was even really difficult for us to obtain a travel clearance certificate because hospitals and doctors were very, very overwhelmed. I was traveling with my roommate and I had a really good company. So the two of us were very excited that this would be a nice, fun trip together. But unfortunately, our enthusiasm was very short lived. As soon as we landed in Delhi, we were taken to an isolation bay and made to wait for 4 hours. We thought this was a standard protocol because we were a flight from Milan and it seemed pretty natural. Little did we know at the time that this 4 hour delay would turn into a 14-day delay because they took us to this military quarantine center as soon as our immigration got over. So you can imagine our roller coaster of emotions all within 24 hours. We were very devastated that we would not be spending our time with our families and instead that we were in a military quarantine center. But we were happy that we at least had each other because we formed a mutual support system. So we could both take turns breaking down, dealing with our emotions while also dealing with the situation outside. One of the conditions upon which I was allowed to come back was that I had to work remotely. And as daunting as that sounds right now, that I had to work from a quarantine facility, it was actually a blessing because I was occupied for almost 8 hours and I came to terms with the quarantine situation very quickly. I'm a UX designer, I have a desk job, and I've been pining for an outdoors office for as long as I can remember. And in the camp, I finally got that. So I would have lunch, sit under a banyan tree, and work on my presentations with nature and birds all around me. And I think towards the end of it, I also got pretty good at negotiating with insects to leave me alone. Having a purpose or direction to your day gives some kind of structure to your being and it helps you focus on what is than to ponder about what could have been or what would have been if you had done something differently. If you've ever experienced job searching, you know what I'm talking about. You have unlimited time and you need to break your day down so that you don't leave room for thoughts like, what am I doing with my life? These are coping mechanisms that we build over a long period of time, and it's a mindset that you cultivate and you push yourself into as soon as you sense an incoming crisis. And this helps you deal with this crisis in a structured and systematic way, thereby reinstating your capacity to build and show resilience. Another story that I wanted to share with you was something that happened 3 days before the quarantine ended. This was a day that we were all in very high spirits, not just because the quarantine was ending, but also because it was my roommate's birthday. We were very pleased with ourselves. We were thinking about how we made a celebration happen with such little resources, and all in all, we were really happy. This was also the day that we found out that India would enter a complete lockdown, which meant that after our quarantine got over, we would not have flights to go back home. And you can imagine the amount of chaos this created because everybody at this point now wanted to leave before the quarantine ended. This was a phase where we were also receiving a lot of fake news and unreliable information from different people, starting from WhatsApp forwards to little clippings of newspapers. And as a researcher, this is something that I've cultivated during my work. I feel I have the capacity to navigate to reliable information and also create backup plans based on the different scenarios presented in front of me. My roommate and I created 3 scenarios based on the type of travel that we expected to, that mode of transport we expected to travel in. We even went as far as picking 3 different outfits based on the probability of catching the virus on that transport. Eventually, we realized that road transport was our only option, so we got in touch with people from other camps in order to club together and go to our respective cities. For me, this was a very difficult time because we were leaving the safety net of the military camp and Not just that, I was parting ways with the person that I had spent my entire quarantine with, and I was not so thrilled about that. I think this was probably the second time in my entire quarantine experience that I actually broke down and cried, because it felt like the one constant thing that I had throughout this time was being taken away from me. But anyway, we had to move on, we had to plan our trip, and we really felt that being careless on this way back home would be really silly after almost 30 days of quarantine. We looked up some NGOs that were willing to help us out. One such NGO is a Gurudwara on NH44 near Sagar. They helped us navigate to clean rest stops and gave us breakfast for the morning and lunch for the day. Another NGO is Hotel Centerpoint in Nagpur, where we stopped for dinner. They also provided us with clean, sanitized rooms to rest in. They've been doing this for almost 700 students, and I think given that people are doing really long and elaborate journeys, this is such a blessing. My gratitude goes out to all these people who've been doing this for no money, risking their own lives simply out of goodwill and a sense of communal well being. I think they form a cloak of invisible support that reassures us and keeps us feeling okay during such a critical time. My understanding of what makes one resilient now has slightly evolved. I don't think I have an edge at dealing with adversity just because I have a loving family and friends. I think my renewed support system was found in really strange places, whether it was the army camp or whether it was the people that I met on the bus or the way home. I think it was our innate humanitarian virtue to use love as a way of self preservation that actually made us come back home safe and sound. Thank you for coming out to hear my story. I hope I was able to show you something optimistic and positive in the seemingly broken world we're in today.